Welcome to the Clear Admit MBA Admissions Podcast. I'm Graham Richmond, and this is your Wiretaps for Monday, June 28th, 2021. I'm joined by Alex Brown from Cornwall, England. Alex, how are things going?
Very good. Thank you, Graham.
So once again, the Tepper School of Business is sponsoring our podcast, so we're going to get a word from them, and then we'll move right into our weekly recap. Carnegie Mellon University's Tepper School of Business has the #1 online MBA program according to U.S. News and World Report. Why? Because Tepper MBAs are taught to thrive where data analytics, technology, and business intersect. At Tepper, students learn the latest analytic and management skills to not only lead but succeed in an increasingly complex business world. You'll learn from Carnegie Mellon's internationally renowned faculty in a vigorous curriculum and enjoy globally networked career and alumni support. Earn your MBA in one of 3 formats built to fit your lifestyle. There's never been a better time to earn your MBA. For more information, go to cmu.edu/Tepper. That's Tepper. So what's been going on the MBA admissions side of things?
Well, actually, as I think we've had these conversations a little bit, things are quieting down, no doubt, and so on and so forth on the wires. But some schools are going back to their wait lists, and we've seen that a little bit last week, or as we're recording this week.
Right.
In terms of, I think Chicago went to its wait list, and I noticed also Cornell Johnson went to its wait list. And what we've seen in prior weeks is maybe Stanford or Harvard or whatever, some of the higher up schools are going to their wait list, so you get that trickle down effect. So it doesn't really surprise me at all. Wait lists are smaller, but schools, or at least some schools, are still pretty active in picking some folks off the wait list as they're getting those deposits coming in and they're getting a much better sense of what their class is looking like.
Yeah, I really feel for people who are either on the wait list. I know I say this every week, but even for people who get in off the wait list at this late stage, which we will talk about a candidate that's kind of in that situation as part of the wiretaps portion here in a moment. But yeah, that's tough. I mean, we're getting late into the, kind of season here, and people are starting to relocate. We usually, some of the preterm activities at these schools might even happen in, early August. So people have got to get their act together, and hopefully, classes are kind of shaping up at this point. The other thing, Alex, that I noticed is that it seemed like the floodgates opened up on essay topic, essay prompt announcements from schools, because we did essay topic analyses last week for Kellogg, Stern, Oxford, Stanford, UT Austin, Tuck, and Booth. I mean, they're just rolling out, right? So I guess everyone's in on the fun now. And as our listeners know, we've already published a ton of them. So we're getting there. I think most of the big schools have released or will certainly be doing so. And I encourage everyone to read those ETAs, as we call them, because they'll help you to write your answers.
Are the deadlines out yet for next season?
I think that in most cases, when schools issue their essay topics, they're also announcing deadlines, but we do have a running list on the site as well. There's a little sub-menu for deadlines, but it seems like things are lining up more or less where they were last year in terms of when schools sit, which means, September, October is really when all these deadlines fall for round 1. January for round 2, and so on. So we'll see how it evolves, but stay tuned for more of that stuff on the site. The other thing I wanted to mention is that I think we have run our last, I really am certain now that we've run our last Real Humans alumni. And this was a guy from Cornell, class of 18, who works at General Mills. He's a associate brand manager. Very cool stuff. And I think that's the end of that series. We must have done like 30 plus of those. And that was a lot of fun to just learn about people's careers. We also did a piece on the site, which made me think of you instantly, Alex. We did this piece about DeFi. Do you know what DeFi is? It was a piece about Wharton and the World Economic Forum, and the title had this thing called DeFi. Do you know what that is?
Not a clue.
Yeah, so that's a decentralized finance. I think this is like proof that I'm feeling pretty old these days, and so I feel like sometimes I don't know all these acronyms, and I guess it's just this whole notion of crypto and everything else. So Wharton, we did an article about Wharton and the World Economic Forum and this thing that they did on decentralized finance.
They can't call it cryptocurrency because that's like a dark web name. They got to call it DeFi. Is that what you're telling me?
I don't know. I think it might be more than just crypto that falls into this umbrella. I'm not sure, but remember, you're talking to somebody who likes likes to drive manual transmission, gas-powered cars or listen to LPs. So I'm probably not the best person.
I'll email Georgie and he can educate me.
Yes, that would be good. All right. So the other thing I wanted to mention is we've got those events that are coming up in July, on July 14th, 21st, and 28th, Wednesdays at noon. We're going to sit down with groups of admissions directors from top business schools and pepper them with questions about their essays. That's all we're going to do. We're going to talk essays. Each session's about an hour, and after the session, each school in attendance is going to open up an individual breakout room where they can connect with candidates. The first one on July 14th is going to have Berkeley, Wharton, MIT, Yale, and Booth. And then the second one's got Duke, UT Austin, Tuck, Cornell, and Ross. And then on the 28th of July, we've got UNC, UCLA, Tepper, LBS, and INSEAD. The events are actually sold out in terms of the number of schools that can take part. We try to cap that. So we've got 5 schools at each event. I expect that it's going to be, quote, standing room only in the virtual sense, of course, for these events, because we already have lots of people signed up. So keep signing up for those events. It should be a lot of fun. Alex, we keep doing Clubhouse every Thursday at noon, and we're recording this on Friday morning, a few days before it will air. But I had a great time doing Clubhouse last night, Thursday, and we'll do it again this week, I guess, right?
Yeah, no, it's really cool. And a big hat tip to Chandler. I think that's his name. Has been joining us on stage the last couple of weeks on Clubhouse, sharing a lot of his perspective. That's the right word, perspective in terms of social impact and that sort of track going for the MBA and so forth. I'm really enjoying it, Graham. I hope it's sort of, I'm still a little bit, is Clubhouse a platform for the future, or is it going to fizzle and die off? But I'm really enjoying it whilst it's lasting.
Yeah, it's fun. And Chandler's got an MBA from Stanford, so it's nice to have someone on the show who isn't affiliated to Wharton. So yeah, no, that's been fun. Before we get into the wiretaps portion of the show, I wanted to mention, I think you know about this, but we got a review via Apple Podcasts out of Malaysia, and the title of the review I'm just noticing now is "Full Theme Song, Please." And then the person says, "The podcast has become a weekly staple of mine. Always looking forward to wiretaps to kickstart my week. Alex and Graham do a fantastic job reviewing potential applicants and in some ways providing application consulting services entirely free. Looking forward to applying all their insights. Stay safe and kick on," this person says.
Nice.
So
Nice.
Very cool. Yeah.
So what I would suggest as our producer, your friend, our producer, whose name I
Dennis.
Dennis has to listen to this. Please, Dennis, put the full theme song on at the end of this podcast so folks can listen, because Panama is very good in my book.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll see. Now everyone's going to hear the singing and they'll decide, you know what, it was better just as a kind of intro piece. But we'll see. Yeah, Dennis can maybe be able to engineer that in. If anyone has any questions or wants to kind of connect with Alex and I offline, you can always send us an email at info@clearadmit.com. Use the subject wiretaps. So, Alex, what do you say we move things along here?
Very good. Very good. Kick on.
Yes, I know. All right, so here we go. This is Wiretaps candidate number 1. All right, so this is a live wire post or it's something that started as a live wire post from a candidate who indicates they were accepted from the waitlist at University of Chicago Booth via phone, and they have a 700 on the GMAT. They had applied in round 2. They're based in Toronto, and they want to work in consulting. And the person added a note in which they said, "I have already accepted an offer and paid 2 deposits to another school, and then I heard from Booth today. I'm beyond ecstatic about this offer, but at the same time, I feel emotionally and financially committed to my first offer. Help." So then conversation ensues. We recommended that the person share this dilemma over on Decision Wire as well, where more conversation ensued, and it turns out that the 2 schools that they've been accepted to, as we know, are Booth and Cornell. And again, the person wants to work in consulting. They would love to land in the DC area. They mentioned that their husband is located in Baltimore, and they said they love the Cornell community. They haven't really met the Booth community yet, but they're sure it's great too. They know Booth's ranked more highly and has better consulting stats, but they say I would be competing in an elite pool if I were at Booth. So they think that maybe the better the school, the harder the competition or something. So I'm going to stop there. What do you make of this? Because there are a whole bunch of different issues in this situation.
Yeah, no, I think this is a really interesting dilemma. And it's a dilemma that several folks are going to face now as they get pulled off the wait list if they're fortunate to be in that situation. You've got a school that you've been admitted to, that you've, like this candidate said, they've created a sort of emotional tie as well as a financial tie to that school. They've got skin in the game. They've probably done some house hunting. They've probably built their networks up to figure stuff out. They're starting to think about that move and how that's going to be, and so on and so forth. Then all of a sudden, boom, you've got an invite to scrap all that and go to Chicago.
Yeah, and no money is involved. I should mention, for now, there's no money involved, so no scholarships.
Yeah, no money, so no financial incentive. So let's look at the facts on the ground. Chicago Booth M7 versus Cornell top 16. So there's, we look at these schools in tiers, so we don't do an ordinal ranking, but it's quite clear that Booth would be in a tier above Johnson in most people's books, I would think. So, if you're being entirely pragmatic, you should say, well, you know what, you've got to think 10 years ahead. Which school is going to provide you the best opportunity? Probably the school from the higher tier. You need to cut all this sort of emotional tie and just head over to Chicago. Easier, probably said than done. What else have we got to talk about here? The fact that this person wants to be on the East Coast, potentially Baltimore, D.C. area. Now I'm thinking, well, what is that Johnson network down in Baltimore, D.C. area, and how comparable is that to the Booth network in that specific area? Because obviously Booth's network is going to be super strong in the Midwest, in Chicago, and in that area. But how does it compare for a candidate that knows their career is going to be on the East Coast, Baltimore, D.C.? So maybe Johnson becomes a little bit more interesting from that standpoint. The other thing that I'll tackle and then turn it over to you, Graham, is this idea that if you go to Booth, you're going to be surrounded by, a slightly higher caliber student cohort, which frankly should be an advantage, not a disadvantage in my book. But because you're surrounded by a slightly higher caliber of students in the cohort, the competition to get the job might be a little bit tougher. I would throw that nonsense out the window, Graham. You're at a high caliber school, there's going to be more opportunities and so on and so forth. So I wouldn't throw it out the window, but I wouldn't use that as something to sway my decision, I should say, in terms of the potential competitive nature of acquiring a job when you're surrounded by a slightly better caliber cohort of students. But let me turn it over to you.
Yeah, this is, I feel for this person and the decision they've got to make. I mean, I think on the surface, as you say, Booth's the higher ranked, or it's in a, higher tier. And, you kind of look way out into the future and you say, gosh, you got to go with the best. And you don't get sucked into the emotional connection that you may have forged. But that's, as you said, easier said than done. There are a couple of things that jumped out at me though. So number one, you hinted at it, and I agree that I wonder what the difference in network is when you start to talk about DC and Baltimore and that part of the East Coast, and whether the Ivy League network that Cornell is a part of suddenly starts to loom large. So I don't know if that could be factored in, and I would certainly do some homework if I were this candidate to see what is the size of the alumni club in each market. Does Cornell benefit from, any sort of more broad sort of Ivy League sort of activity that happens with alums? Because often, as I've mentioned before on the podcast, these schools actually team up, at least the Ivies often do, to do events and things. So that's one thing. The other thing I just was thinking about is fit. Fit does matter. It's a couple years of your time. And these two schools are really different in terms of, one's in a kind of urban setting. The other is in a more, not that Ithaca is a tiny town, but it's, kind of a college town in a rural location in New York State. Maybe a little bit closer knit. is it easier for this person to get to their husband who's in Baltimore via car from Cornell versus maybe having to figure out a way to fly out from Chicago? I don't know. So those are like life factors, and life matters, right? People need to think about that stuff too. So just to play devil's advocate, those are a few points that were on my mind as I was thinking about, wow, could a case be made to just stick with Cornell? Again, I think most people would say, look, you just got into a school that's a notch up and you take the offer, but it's not easy. I recognize we're late in the game here, so I feel for this person.
And both places are cold in the winter, right? They got that in common.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. That's an excellent point. If you're a skier, maybe being in New York State's better than Chicago, but both are cold. So I wish this person the best of luck. I'm sure that they're going to do well and can land a job. I mean, they listed some firms. What I liked about their list, I don't know if you noticed this, but in the Decision Wire post, they mentioned, they work at like A.T. Kearney, Bain, BCG, McKinsey, LEK. I liked the fact that they had a number of kind of landing places on their list that weren't just MBB. So that also made me think, well, where does this person need to go in order to realize that goal? Frankly, they could go to either, is my guess. So that's my take on this. It's a tough call.
I think that's fair enough. I think we spent 5 minutes and we've not advanced this candidate's decision further one iota.
Oh, I think we gave food for thought.
Hopefully we shared some of the reasons for one decision or the other. But, if this candidate ultimately ends up choosing Johnson, absolutely fantastic. If they end up choosing Booth, fantastic. I mean, either choice could certainly be the right choice, depending on truly what drives this person's sort of calculus.
Absolutely. So let's move on and talk about Wiretap's candidate number 2. All right, so this is a post we received on ApplyWire. This person's looking to start school in the fall of 22. They're applying to Berkeley, LBS, Washington Foster, UCLA, USC, and UT Austin. They've been working in a CPG finance rotational program, pre-business school, and they'd love to get into tech after business school. The GMAT score is a 690. They have a 3.8 GPA from undergrad, and they've been working for 4 years. They're located in Seattle, Washington, and would like to land in California or West Coast or London after business school. They did note, before I let you get into the assessment, they did put in their notes that they are a longtime listener of the podcast. They say, my girlfriend, who is not interested in getting an MBA, is also now hooked on the podcast, and we listen to it together every week. So clearly the girlfriend deserves a medal, because why would someone listen to this if they're not applying to business school? Maybe for your charming accent, Alex. It's got to be that. That's what I'm putting my money on that.
Yeah, who knows? But yeah, that is actually quite fun. It's quite interesting, though. I mean, I don't know if you finished your preamble.
Yeah, it's fine.
They talk about, they might want to do an MBA in London or the West Coast, the United States. Certainly, in this case, climate is not not the factor driving their decision, because obviously California climate could be quite different to the London climate. Which, I mean, obviously, I'm in the UK. I gotta love London, but
right.
Yeah, it's not this is not a climate-based decision.
No, I should also share that this person, if I remember correctly, is both American and British. So I think that's why there's kind of a tie back to the UK.
Yeah.
And they did a semester abroad, or a summer abroad, I guess, while they were an undergraduate in the UK at LSE. And they're wondering, like, does that help their case with going to an LBS? They did also share that they were in the top 10% of their graduating class at a state school, and they had strong extracurriculars at the time. So I'll leave it there. But what do you make of this candidate? Because I know one of the things is this GMAT score. They have some good schools on their list, and their score's a little low. Yeah. I mean, there are good schools on the list, Graham, but they're not overly ambitious. I don't think. Yeah.
So, I mean, clearly Haas and LBS stand out on their list. Anderson, perhaps also. And then, you got Marshall and McCombs and stuff. They're very good schools, but you would probably place them in that top 20 rather than much higher up some of these schools. So with a 690 GMAT and a 3.8 GPA, I love a 3.8 GPA. I don't care what anyone says. If you've got a strong GPA, that shows real good consistency over a 4-year period. To me, that's dedication to your academics. If you're doing that whilst also being active in the extracurriculars, hats off to that. I think that's absolutely fantastic. And I would argue, I mean, I know we look at the GMAT as a predictor of success in the MBA admissions and in the MBA programs themselves, or at least that's what GMAT tries to tell us. I do think undergraduate record is a higher predictor of success in the MBA admissions than the test score. I've seen data on this. I believe it.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's sort of by the by. A great GPA, love that. So I'm going to ask you, Graham, is there any sense that this candidate could be from an overrepresented population? I don't think they are, but what's your sense on that?
Well, I mean, they're a white male working in a finance rotational program at a big company, but they're also, they have dual citizenship, right, with the UK. So I think, I mean, on some level, they're not. They get points in both areas, right? They're sort of overrepresented because they're white male working at sort of a traditional company, but then the British part, I think, puts a bit of it adds a nuance to their candidacy. And I think we know, U.S. schools love to get Europeans, and there aren't enough Europeans applying to U.S. schools. So I'm not worried about that part. But I do, I don't know. It's a tough call.
I'm not worried about that part, quite frankly. So this gets into the debate. Should this candidate apply in round 1 with the 690 or apply in round 2 with a chance of spending a little bit more time and trying to one more go at getting the test score that some of their sort of practice tests were showing, which is around the 730s? Because quite frankly, Graham, if this candidate had the 730 GMAT, the 3.8 GPA, 4 years of experience, if that's backed up by strong recs and they can show impact, I'm thinking this is an M7 caliber candidate, right?
Yeah.
So is 690 that very different? Probably it isn't, because again, they've got this super GPA and so on and so forth. But my point is, as a candidate, if you can improve any aspect of your candidacy, if you have the control to be able to do that, it's definitely worth doing, even if it's just one piece of the candidacy. And I think the GMAT, which 690, I mean, it's ridiculous we talk about retaking tests when you have a 690, but frankly, the GMAT is the weakest link in this profile, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm suggesting that, maybe get a couple of applications in round 1, but focus a little bit more on round 2 and have one more run at this GMAT test.
I'm worried because I know this person's taken it 5 times, right? So when they go to, I'm wondering if will the admissions reader sort of feel like, okay, this is sort of overkill, or should they shift gears, take the GRE and just have a single score to show and have it be a high score, because it also looks like the math is the weaker element for them. Yeah. I think that their percentiles, which I looked up before we jumped on to record, I think their percentiles were 60th percentile on the math and 85th on the verbal. So that makes me think that I wondered, if they took the GRE, maybe they would get a more balanced score and an overall, kind of higher score that would make them competitive. But I hear you loud and clear that, wow, with a really good test score and that 3.8 and a kind of, decent professional background in ECs and the British angle, suddenly I'm like, yeah, M7, why not? So tough call. But I agree with you that there's no rush to apply in the first round, given that they're not a super overrepresented type candidate. I want them to get this test out of the way, though. They got to figure it out and make a decision and go all in on it. I'm worried about is the 6th time going to really make a big difference on the GMAT, or should they take the GRE instead?
Yeah, I mean, I think the candidate's probably the only one that can really make that call. But I just want to throw it out there for the candidate for the candidate's partner too, because they're listening, and that's absolutely fantastic.
But she's not going to take the test.
No, but it's, if they think that realistically they can bump that score up 20 points, then I would spread the apps over rounds 1 and round 2 and give yourself a shot in round 2 with a slightly higher test score. And you can go back to your round 1 apps if a final decision hasn't been made and update them on the new test score.
Yeah.
So sort of think about that. I think there's a lot to like here, Graham, quite frankly. Obviously, being part British, that's extremely valuable
Yeah.
and stuff. But yeah, frankly, a lot to like here. Just make sure that the goals make sense. Obviously, they're going into tech. They want to get into marketing tech. I think that's what it was. And make sure that that's not just sort of pulled out of a hat going from finance, consumer packages to tech marketing or whatever. So as long as that makes sense, lots to like here, Graham.
Yeah, agreed. I'm hearing a little patriotism in your voice there. Is that because England has made it into the next round with the Euro Cup? Is that what's happening?
We got to play the Germany next week, so it's not going to last long.
Well, when France played Germany, Germany helped them out by kicking the ball into their own goal, so that was good. But
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on. We got one more candidate for this week's episode. So this is Wiretap's candidate number 3. So again, we've got an ApplyWire entry. Canada is looking at 6 schools, and they want to start in the fall of 22. They've got Columbia, Cornell, Dartmouth, Harvard, MIT, and Yale on the list. And they've been working in investment management. And after business school, they're hoping to get into asset management. So I guess stay in the similar field, but maybe hedge funds as well. They've got a bunch of companies on their target list, including BlackRock, Fidelity, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, State Street, and Vanguard. Personal favorite of mine, Vanguard, because they're in the Philadelphia area. GMAT score is 750. GPA is a 3.9. So as if the 3.8 wasn't, stellar enough, this person has a 3.9, Alex.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, they've been working for 9 years, and they are located, get this, in Okinawa, Japan, and they would like to end up in New York after business school. They indicate that they love the podcast and enjoy listening on the way to work, and I want to share a little anecdote that they posted in their notes here that I thought was really interesting. They said that I guess they know that we've been collecting, anecdotes when we were celebrating the 100th episode, and so they wanted to share an anecdote of their own, and they wrote, I downloaded a bunch of episodes before I went on my last deployment on ship and was listening to wiretaps aboard the USS Germantown during our spring patrol in the Indo-Pacific earlier this year. Definitely helped the days go by quicker. So that's just, I don't know, can anyone top that? That's kind of a really unusual thing that, wiretaps is being aired on a ship out at sea. Very cool.
Yeah, I didn't even know something like that would be legal. I think that's absolutely fantastic.
Well, yeah. Maybe he didn't tell them you were British. They kind of maybe passed it off as an American show. But to go back to the candidate, though, and this is actually important, they have a really interesting professional background in that they did the kind of corporate thing. They've got their CPA, CFA. They worked in investment, management. They naturalized.
Let me ask you one thing, Graham,
yeah.
before you go into the next piece. If we stop right there, you got a 750 GMAT, a 3.9 GPA, 4 or 5 years experience on the accounting side in investment management. This candidate's got a bit of a shot at the schools they're applying.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, and then...
they're applying at pretty highbrow schools, let me say.
Yeah.
But that would be, I'm not saying a standard sort of pathway to top schools, but certainly wouldn't be out of left field. Candidate would probably be top 16, maybe M7 caliber at that point in my book.
Right.
All right, I'll let you continue.
Yeah, and so, no, that's a really good stopping point, because then what did they do? They didn't apply to business school. They naturalized as a U.S. citizen, and they felt so patriotic that they commissioned as an officer in the U.S. Marine Corps, and that's what they've been doing for the last 3 years. They have 1 more year to go, and they indicate that they're currently a manpower planner. They lead a team of 8, have worked with counterparts from allied countries in Japan, South Korea, Thailand, Australia, and the Philippines on different exercises. They're forward stationed in Japan for 3 years. That's why they're there now. They've done some deployments. Yeah, very interesting. But they've been now, I guess by the time they apply, it's 4 years out of industry and in the military. And so they're thinking, I need an MBA to kind of smooth that transition back to civilian life. What do you make of this candidate? Because I recognize the numbers are good, but they have 9 years of experience, so they're much older than your typical candidate. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, assuming the story is genuine, which you've got to assume it is absolutely genuine.
Yeah, you can't make this up.
I think it's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, you become a U.S. citizen. I mean, I have a little bit, I mean, not a lot of experience with this, but I was a green card holder in the States for lots of years. And I had, colleagues and whatever that actually went through the naturalization process. And the fact that sort of stimulated to them this sort of need, not necessarily need, but this sort of desire to then join the services and contribute in that regard and do some super interesting stuff, by the way, I just think it's absolutely brilliant. And I think as long as that's portrayed well, obviously through the applications, I was an AdCom. I think other AdCom are going to read this and be like, wow,
Yeah.
that's cool,
Yeah.
right? So as long as they piece a story together, they're going to get that wow factor in my book. Their challenge will be, as you suggest, you've now got 9 years of experience. You've got to show me as an AdCom that you're going to integrate well the fit for the MBA programs and so on and so forth. That's going to be the challenge. Make sure you show really good fit in both the academic environment. I've got no problem with that. 750 GMAT, 39 GPA, CFA, CPA, whatever. This person is wicked smart. So, extracurriculars and other aspects and so on and so forth, just make sure that they really nail the fit side of each of the programs that they are applying.
Yeah.
It's kind of mind-boggling to me what this candidate's done, frankly.
I mean, obviously, if they had done a couple years in finance and then a few years in the military, when we're a bit younger, this would be probably, there's like a no doubt. I mean, they have all these other activities they do. They're a kind of a programmer, musician, artist. They're part of the Marine Corps martial arts program, brown belt, by the way. So there's just a ton to like. And so my only concern is, are they a bit older? And how much of a liability is it? I don't think it's going to matter as long as they do a good job with the written component of the essays and conveying their plan, conveying their excitement about joining and really getting involved in an MBA program. So I mean, this is a really great candidacy, and there's a lot to like. I think it also, if they're willing, I think being able to talk about the difference between working at a mutual fund and, I guess they also worked at a small fund of hedge funds as well. Like, they've got that kind of investment industry experience. And then they also have this totally different universe of the military where they've seen, a very different probably leadership structure. And so it's probably just a lot of really good lessons learned. And I would hope they'd bring all that into the classroom. I mean, that's gold, right? So very cool. Yeah. So I got to ask you, Alex, you had a green card, and did you ever think about, joining the military to sort of support the U.S.?
I have a lot of respect for all service people. I mean, it's absolutely brilliant what people do for their countries and so on and so forth. But this candidate, what they've done, I haven't seen something like this in the year or two that we've been running Applywire and now this podcast. So I'm pretty impressed with that decision. And then as a result of that decision, I'm sure the sets of experiences that they've had have been really, really interesting.
Yeah, agreed. All right, I'll stop ribbing you. I know you were older when you were in the U.S. anyway, but it is a really unique profile, and I agree. I don't think we've seen something like this. I mean, we've seen plenty of service folks who've had interesting paths into the service and stuff, but this is cool. And I don't know if I mentioned, but this person is originally from China, and they're trilingual. They speak Chinese, French, English. So just really cool pathway over to the U.S.
I don't think we've seen, though, many service folks or folks that went into service that didn't do it directly after their undergrad or enlisted.
Right.
Thing. This is different in my book. It's undergrad, complete, went into industry, did 3 or 4 years industry, whatever, and then went into service. I've not seen that pathway.
Yeah, no, I don't think I've seen it either. So very cool profile. I want to thank that person for listening and for sharing. I want to thank all three candidates this week that we've talked about for sharing their profiles. I know, you got to put yourself out there, and then everyone weighs in on the site. So, and sometimes we talk about them on the show here, right? So it's been a great job as usual, Alex, picking these out. Yeah, and I would just encourage anyone listening to tell someone you know about this podcast. Applicants can get a lot out of it. You can learn a lot about how to apply to business school. That's why we do it. So please continue to tune in. And Alex, I guess we'll do it all again in 1 week's time.
Yeah, but big shout out to Dennis, please. I want to listen to Panama now. I want the whole track.
All right, we'll make sure he knows. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you in a week's time.
Take care. Stay safe.